It was King Solomon who wrote so long ago, "For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to harvest, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to throw away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace." So what are you allergic to? We were told by many when we moved to Virginia that the Mid-Atlantic is where people come to discover allergies. I've been allergic to trees my whole life. Growing up in Arizona, I suffered mightily when the cottonwood pollen saturated the desert air. My allergies were bad in Florida too, where the growing season is year-round. But they've never been as bad as here. Early on, I was never so disappointed that those warning voices were right. A couple of years ago, I threw in the towel and I did the environmental testing for our locale, and yes, it turns out that in general, I'm simply allergic to the state of Virginia. Thank God for allergy shots. That said, Erin and I took a walk through our neighborhood after dinner the other night, and she said, of all the places we've lived, this is the most beautiful. And she's right, of course. Perhaps you've noticed my afternoon walks, the pictures from my afternoon walks around the Fairfax campus. There has been a great deal of beauty to capture recently. This is the way of spring. It brings us beauty of incredible immensity, and for many of us, it also brings hives, asthma attacks, and the symptoms of a chronic unending cold. We are entering a new season of this new COVID world we are all inhabiting. From the perspective of leadership, and as one who has a concern for the well-being of community on his mind, it's a genuinely confusing time. When I'm out and about, it seems clear to me that someone shouted vaccine and our nation started to act largely like it's pre-COVID business as usual. Juxtapose this with the reality that the virulent strains are rearing their ugly heads, and in many locales, hospitals are overflowing with COVID patients again. What's more, though our nation seems to be at peak vaccination distribution, our nation is only at 21% vaccination rate, and the state of Virginia is at 20.3%. Here in Nova, there's a waiting list to get them. Northam is throwing the gates wide open on April 18th so that everyone 16 and older will be eligible, but this certainly means longer queues as distribution simply hasn't kept pace with demand. In the world of the church, more and more communities are allowing the folks who desire it to return to in-person worship given the restrictions that are still in place. Participant caps, face masks, cessation of singing and fellowship times, and social distancing maintained, of course. There's a great deal that seems to be driving these moves, and very little of it has to do with safety. Roman Catholic theology, for instance, makes an in-person Eucharistic essential to salvation. The evangelical churches in our midst have been aligned with more politically conservative voices and see the lack of offerings regarding in-person worship as an infringement of rights. Interestingly, the Protestant churches around us have taken a very similar approach to our own. Good Shepherd Episcopal in Fairfax, St. Stephen United Methodist in Fairfax, Burke Presbyterian, and Abiding Presence Lutheran Church in Burke are all still doing worship digitally. All of these, like us, have reopening task forces that are putting together strategies for creating an opportunity for in-person worship. Most seem to have targets for this summer. So where does that leave Lord of Life? As I pointed out above, we have an active reopening task force that is putting together a plan for our Parish Leadership Council to reflect on at our April meeting. We hope to have a communication from the PLC to the congregation by the end of the month, detailing our thinking and plans for once again offering in-person worship experiences. For those of you who remain cautious and leery, know that we are approaching this from a posture of utmost concern for the safety and well-being of our community. We will plan well, and our processes will be clean and intelligent for the return to in-person worship. For those of you who have growing frustration at the fact that we don't have in-person worship, like so many others do, please know that it's coming and will likely be here in less than 3 months. You've been wonderfully patient thus far. Just a little bit longer, friends, just a little bit longer. And for the many of you who love our live stream worship offering, you're in luck. This service will not be going away, though it may have a new time as we begin to add Sunday morning in-person worship services back into the mix. We have heard from many of you that you love this form of worship and that it has worked for you better than most had imagined. Your leadership believes strongly that this form of worship is a key piece of how we will connect and grow this church for the foreseeable future. The future is ever blooming. With this comes beauty, the need for lots of patience, and at times the unwanted allergic reactions. The pastor who sent me to seminary, Michael Bell, loved Easter lilies, but was also profoundly allergic to them. Easter Sunday mornings were always a mix of delight. He thought they were beautiful and dread because their presence in the worship space at Community Church of Life in Bakersfield, California, meant that he would be coughing and sneezing through his Easter sermon. We are in the midst of a spring bloom, both in reality and metaphorically. And like most things, this moment will come with incredible beauty, new surprise, and obligatory difficulty. We've done the rest of this season of COVID at Lord of Life with aplomb. Let's do this re-entry with aplomb as well. We have it in us, as God leads us, out of his tomb and our tombs and into a vibrant and beautiful future. Onward.